that being said, I notice the time ticking by, so we can go ahead and get started. My name is Ashling, and I am a customer value manager here at Easygenerator, and I have the pleasure of hosting today's call, and I'm joined by some very exciting guests. So to get started, perhaps we can ask you to introduce yourselves. Derek, you're first on my screen, so would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi, Derek Bruce. Lots of years experience working in L&D and leadership development, currently based in the UK, working for a large food retailer.
Nice. And then thanks, Derek. Talha, you're next. No pressure.
Thanks, Ashling. My name's Talha. I'm the product lead for EasyAI at Easygenerator, responsible for the AI vision strategy, and look forward to sharing my insights and learning from you all.
Okay, and then last but not least, we have Patrik.
Yeah, I guess it's me. So hi, everyone. I'm Patrik. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Easygenerator. So obviously working a lot on these AI products that we're going to talk about today and AI more generally. So that's me.
Nice. Thanks, everyone, for the introductions. I see that the chat is going, but we can certainly go ahead and jump into things. Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about AI in e-learning and how it's shaping e-learning and how things are going. So we'll look at kind of what's happening now, what's happening in the future, and how we see things evolving, and how AI can help us when it comes to learning, how it's going to reshape the way we learn, but then also the strategies that we have as well. Okay, so the first question, we can start things off with you, Derek. Where do you see AI going? How is it a turning point right now for L&D?
Yeah, it's funny because if I look back to when I started, I think it's kind of more of an evolution than a huge turning point. But in a context of how L&D teams know what's going on, AI has really helped in a discovery phase in terms of analyzing needs, analyzing skills gaps, also analyzing and linking to organizations' need. And I think from a learner perspective, it's also helping to make it more personalized. So you can actually spend time doing stuff which you want to do in terms of role play, scenarios, coaching, recommendations. So it's kind of an evolution of what learning is, but the turning point is probably more what it can do, which I think we'll touch on later. And day to day, it helps with things like automation of note taking, that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, there's a lot of things that it's doing and helping in the L&D space, I see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then, yeah, and then Talha, I guess, do you have anything to add in that? Do you see AI as a turning point for L&D?
Absolutely. I think one of the fundamentals where generative AI actually excels is content creation. Even from the very first days of when it became an actual thing, ChatGPT came out. I mean, of course, large language models existed before that, but they really became a thing and came to spotlight when ChatGPT was released. And immediately it meant for the e-learning companies, and as we saw it, all jumping on the bandwagon, given that it was really, really good at content creation. And not only content creation, actually, what made it really, really interesting for the L&D space was the personalization aspect of it, where you could really be flexible with it, ask it questions, right, and tailor content according to your need. And over time, it evolved from text going into video, audio, images, and all these things are like at the core of content creation, which makes it, of course, one of the things that really, became the turning point for L&D, I think, and really shaped how or changed how people then create content, because it brought them speed, so it increased their productivity, and also brought them that creativity and flexibility in creating content. And yeah, that impacts different things like enabling subject matter experts and enabling learners to learn better. So yeah, in that regard, it is absolutely a turning point.
Yeah, I think you're onto something from my end as well. Even creating content, I can see how generative AI is really changing the game. Patrik, I know you have some experience with this as well, so I'm curious how you see AI bringing language and learning closer together.
Yeah, no, to elaborate on what's already been said, I think in particular, what makes this interesting is that it's the right technology for the right industry. There's always these tech trends in the past, like we had blockchain, and then people talk about machine learning, and it goes on and on and on. But blockchain didn't benefit us in any way. It had an application in finance in various cases and distributed databases. Same thing with machine learning, and this older school AI was very good for like Google, if you want to do recommendations like Netflix, or have people click more on ads. But it didn't help us as L&D people because we don't necessarily benefit from these kind of recommendations. But now with large language models, which deals with language, which is a lot about information and how to transfer this information, that is what LLMs do. And that is also what we do. So it really feels like it's the right technology for the right industry, which doesn't apply to everyone. There's also companies that don't benefit too much from large language models. If you're a marketplace, for example, then this is not the technology for them. So hence, I hope also for everyone on this call that people see this. It is really something that can help us transform it. And we'll talk more about that in this call, I'm sure. But hence why I think that this particular technology is now an inflection point for this industry.
Yeah, 100%. There might be a use for blockchain in e-learning. I haven't thought of it yet, but maybe somebody can correct us. Correct us in the comments. And Derek, just to pick up on something that you said, because I think it ties nicely in. You see AI is more of an evolution, let's say, rather than a revolution. And I'd be curious, to hear more about how you think AI tools have already changed what we do in learning day to day.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and there's a really great comment in terms of content creation. If I think of my day-to-day and the teams I work with, previously it was you would design stuff using PowerPoint, etc. One of the beautiful uses of AI is actually you can type in a prompt and it can help you design content. But there's still the human-centric piece of it where you can't just send it out. And I think a lot of you would have seen recently in the news an issue with one of the accounting firms and an Australian council where accounting was done using AI and it wasn't accurate. So this huge, so for me, the evolution is it's a great tool and it still needs human centricity there. But I think the bigger evolution is around, as I mentioned, understanding what it is people need from a learning team and learning organization and learning function. Because if it can help you with discovery, but understanding the skills which map to your objectives and goals as an organization, and it kind of sifts through the data, which is one of the things no L&D person likes to do, to be honest. I think that's one of the nice ways it can be used to help make sure the teams add real value to their functions as well, as opposed to being seen as order takers. I think that evolution from being the one to actually create stuff, actually being the one to actually practically advise what companies need, that's a good step using AI as well.
And I'll actually agree with that as well. So I'll pick up on that, because to me, AI is not so much about replacing people. As with most organizations, AI wouldn't know what's specific to your company. In fact, I would argue that most of the knowledge in an organization doesn't even exist in a document. Rather, it's a question of how can we have people transmit what they know in their head to other people in the organization. Doesn't matter how smart the AI will become, it still doesn't know what you want to teach and what you want to teach to other people. So indeed, I think it's not only a matter of a human verifying the content, it's probably still to a large degree a human getting this knowledge on paper. Of course, AI can help a lot with this. So you don't have to do too much with the heavy lifting in terms of getting the right block and the right image in the right place with the right pixels. All of that is just like fluff work to facilitate the larger purpose, right? Which is to get the information across. And I think that's where AI can help. But the human is still the one who actually wants to know something and want to do something with it.
And I think, and again, I think we'll be back to the facilitator, but I think a nice thing about it from an L&D space is it does help, as I said, give people access to learning in different perspectives, in different locations, different environments. If we think back, a lot of learning historically was face-to-face, done in a room with flip charts, post-its, pens, cookies, that kind of stuff. And it's just taken that and said, there's a much wider opportunity for how people can learn in their own space when they want to learn is 24/7 as well, which is kind of more in keeping with how society is evolving as well. So kind of just in time element, I think is kind of what it's doing really well as well.
Yeah, and also just to add very quickly on the technical aspect of it, like if you look at the foundation of a large language model, it's based off of probabilities, right? And just given that fact, it is very likely for the AI to get things wrong, and not have the definite answer you're looking for. And hence, what makes it beautiful is the iterative process that you take with AI to get to the result that you want. So it shouldn't be taken as a one-shot generation and response silver bullet, but rather something that you iterate with and get to the result that you're looking for at the end.
And I am curious about, what do you think that the biggest misconception you still hear about AI and L&D might be, Derek?
I think it's in the chat. I think one of the people have actually already said it's going to take your jobs. It's going to design stuff. It's going to deliver stuff. People can access it online. You don't need people to actually do that. And if I look at, especially post-pandemic, the most successful learning intervention experiences people have told me they've had, whether they've been leaders, managers, or colleagues, it's involved people. It's involved doing something, and it's involved a combination of people, a combination of AI, and a combination of actually making mistakes and learning. So I think it's not gonna revolutionize the L&D in space in terms of getting rid of people. I think it will help people. Where the phrase co-pilot outside of a product, I think, is probably the best description of how AI can support and learn. Is basically it can work with us to make sure we give a better kind of impact to organizations as well.
But yeah, with that in mind, about how can we use AI to help us create impact, I'm curious, if you have any recommendations on how leaders can become more comfortable experimenting with AI.
I think one of the things in terms of leaders, especially, and they're the ones who own the budget, they're the ones who allow you to have a software which uses AI to actually bring in an organization. One of the things I've experienced from working now is actually giving leaders access and said you've got to log on to a number of platforms which use AI. You've got to experience things ranging from, I don't know, Copilot and there's very specific sessions to sessions with social media and AI specialists coming in talking to leaders about the impact of it as well. I think it's the exposure, but also the structured exposure. So if I think about here, we've actually got drop-in sessions and schedule sessions on using Copilot for everything from emails to summarizing documentation through to data analysis and through to helping write strategies. And that's it covers all of that. And I think you've got to give exposure and make it. The one thing I'd say, looking at the question, is actually the example is make it normal and make it accessible, and don't be scared to break it. And I think the higher we get in an organization, I've seen, for example, some of the leaders I've worked with don't even have LinkedIn profiles, don't have a picture on LinkedIn. If you think that's the starting point, then AI is going to be a huge jump. So it's actually, we as a learning team have said it's something you've got to use, and it's something which is just normal and you can't break it, and expose them to it that way.
Yeah, I guess, exposure, trying it out, getting your hands on it. I think adding to that, Shivani asked a good question. Do we have any examples? And Talha, in your experience, do you have any examples about how AI can be used for learning?
Yeah, absolutely. One example being myself, a couple of instances where I've really found a lot of value in using AI to learn something. I think one great example, one great tool I recommend everyone is to try Google Notebook LM. And one concrete example is me being in AI product. Sometimes it's very important for me to like keep up with the latest trends. And of course, there are some very technical papers out there that you want to absorb and get the value out of. But a lot of it sometimes is it's something that you don't understand because it's super technical. You're not a machine learning engineer. But then you can take those papers in, for example, put it into Notebook LM, and then it has a variety of different formats to learn from. So I personally took a paper on trying to make AI more deterministic from a technical angle, uploaded it into Notebook LM, then converted that into a podcast. And a podcast that was very simple to understand, a conversation in Notebook LM that then I just listened to in my commute to the office and back. And that helped me absorb the content 10x better than if I would have read it, right? And personalize it for my particular proficiency level, right? And same with vibe coding, right? I was able to learn from ChatGPT, having back-to-back with it to understand how I can develop some quick prototypes internally. So the personalization aspect, I think, has really helped learn and consume content that maybe would have been really difficult at how it was one size fits all, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I think another example that I come across a little bit, which is actually our own product as well, something we're experimenting with right now, which is AI role playing. So historically, doing role plays are kind of an expensive way of practicing things, and everyone here knows about the value of skill-based learning and practicing what you read about, etc. Hence, role play is a very valuable way to practice a lot of these soft skills. The question is, how do you do that? Maybe you have one trainer, but you have 1,000 employees. How are you going to role play with all of these 1,000 employees? So that's also been some things that we've been experimenting with, also together with our customers, to build a product where you're actually role playing with an AI, where the AI also have very specific instructions as to how the role play should go about, what are the constraints that the learner should run into. And you can have very realistic role plays where you also get an evaluation afterwards to see how did you do. And then it becomes very personalized. And I saw someone posted there about personalization as well, that this becomes unique for you. You didn't have to read about it. You can practice it, and you also get very concrete feedback as to what you can do better. So that's also these examples of what also becomes possible with AI now, which wasn't necessarily possible in the past.
Yeah. I can't only even imagine where it's going to go from there, how fast it's all happening. I think, yeah, if we're thinking about things like speed, I'd be interested, Patrik, if you have any tips on how we can spot, real value versus shiny features when it comes to AI tools.
Yeah, I think someone posted about that as well, that there's a lot of hype now as well with AI, and there's going to be an AI feature in every single tool at some point. And at some point, indeed, we got to see what actually makes sense. And I think that comes back to, is there an underlying problem for this product? There's a lot of AI product that comes out now, which looks very nice and shiny, but it's a little bit of solution looking for a problem. So also for all the practitioners in this room, when it comes to evaluating products and AI features, be very clear about this is the underlying problem that we have. For example, we have Course Builder in Easygenerator. It's kind of cool. AI can build a course for you, but why is that even important? Why is it interesting? The feedback that we hear a lot from customers, and also is a big reason why we're building it, is that for subject matter experts, so not L&D people, these are people who are expert at their craft, but not instructional design. It takes a long time for them to build a course because, again, they're not experts at it. And it might not have the right didactical quality to be sort of top-notch. And those are real problems that then, of course, leads to an SME having to spend hours and hours and hours on something that's not their job to build this course. So as long as you all can identify that this is a real problem that we have in the organization today, and here is a tool that tackles this, and hopefully we can also make sure that it noticeably improves it. It actually is a materially better solution than it would be without AI. That, I think, is the main way to try to distinguish what is the flashy and cool, fancy stuff here, and what actually brings something to the table, what is valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting as well that you've grounded us in today. I know it's exciting to talk about the future, but it's also exciting to look at what's currently possible. So I'd be curious to follow up on that, Patrik. Beyond automation, what is currently possible with AI in e-learning?
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned automation, and I think that was also a previous point. To me, AI in learning right now is very little about automation, which is perhaps different from a self-driving car. This is automation. No human is involved. The AI will drive the car. That's it. When it comes to authoring, let's talk about these separate. There's the author side and there's the learner side. But if we talk about the author side, it's more about augmentation in my mind. So it's still the human, like I mentioned in the very beginning. It is the person, it's the author that knows something, and there's something they want to communicate to their colleagues. Now the question is, how can we make this more efficient? How can we do the heavy lifting with the AI to make it faster and of better quality? So I think that's one big way, not in terms of how AI is automating things, but how they're achieving a level of augmentation. Then there's also a ton of things on the authoring side where things become cheaper to do. AI generated video would cost you 10,000 to make a video. Now it costs you $10. And also something we're looking into now. And I don't want to go too long on this, but then there's also the whole learner side. In the past, learning was always static in a single format. Now with AI, a lot of these things can become very dynamic and personalized, and you can get feedback on what you're learning. So this list goes on and on. I would love to talk about it for the whole hour, but we don't have that much time. But this is just a small part of why I'm very excited about what we can do with AI, especially now in the coming years.
Yeah, so it's more about augmentation, and I guess, yeah, that's already possible. And I guess, Derek, on the other hand, you have some hands-on experience with this too. So I'm curious what you see is currently possible with AI and e-learning.
I think similar things. I think one of the beautiful things is also mentioning videos, and I think also that it allows us to kind of bring in a much richer experience for the learner as well. And one of the things is we've done some learning here, where going back to the pricing side of stuff, we wanted to make the experience very visual, very natural, very human centric, and utilized a great tool which allowed the video but also the audio to be generated using AI. And one of the cool things which I didn't realize it could do was we started the video with just a shot of an individual in a very small background, and that was a space individual laptop background, which would have just been a black wallpaper. The AI then allowed us to expand just that starting point into a full-blown room and actually just make the whole experience much, much richer, and then move through the house of the individual as we're going through the learning. So those kind of things which weren't available many, many years ago allow, when you're going through the e-learning experience, the visualization to be much richer, much more human-centric, rather than just a typical static image in the background. And also the ability to have really amazing voiceovers and actually have different diverse voices to what people are saying, rather than the same typical voices. And it's a very small thing, but inclusion's a big thing where I work. And so having different accents was amazing as well, being able to actually do that just using AI as well from a learning perspective.
Yeah, it's really nice, and nice to end with a positive example there. Inclusion matters, and I know it's something we speak about here as well. I don't want to leave anyone out of the conversation, and I'm really interested in this topic, and I see that the chat is busy as well. So Talha, anything to add on this point, but what's currently possible with AI and e-learning?
Currently possible, yeah. I mean, we have, of course, the automation that we talk about, but then we also talk about the fact that AI is helping reducing the barriers to sharing and consuming knowledge, right? I think if you look at it purely from subject matter experts being able to create content, um, in the past, when we didn't have large language models, when we didn't have AI, it was a monumental task for someone to create a learning. Like, why would I, as a subject matter expert, wake up and decide to create e-learning and share knowledge? What is the motivation? There's so many barriers, right? I don't know how to create a good learning. But then AI makes it possible for me today to actually get a working e-learning module created within minutes, right? And then I can verify the output and quickly share it with my peers. So it helps me share knowledge, but then also from a learner perspective, it makes it very easy, where you can take that learning and, depending on the tool that you're using, have the ability to steer that content in the direction that you would like, right? And consume it in a personalized way. So I think this is what's happening today, and we can build upon this for future as well, where we look at the concept of hyper personalization. I think this term is going to be blowing in the future. I think this will be the viral term in future, where it will just be about personalization, and how people can get the value out of a base product like they want to, right? Whether it's authoring, whether it's learning, or yeah, any other application. So yeah, I think this is what's possible today. And then also AI is opening doors to newer ways of consumption, reaching audiences that wasn't possible before, right? And scaling it. For example, a very cool thing that we saw internally in one of our hackathons that we've done, Patrik organized it, was an application for frontline workers, right? Where we were able to use AI to kind of ingest manuals and then create a full simulation experience on how to use a coffee machine, right, from the manual itself. Reaching frontline workers where they are is a pain point, right? So it's enabling us reaching these new target audiences as well. So yeah, a lot of applications that we can talk about.
Yeah, so if you heard it here first, Tada's prediction is that personalization is going to be the next hot topic. But I think that links nicely to a current trend or topic that we're seeing in learning, and that's connected to skills and roles and development. So Derek, from the practical I was going to say hands on the ground, but feet on the ground perspective, I'd be curious how you see AI helping L&D connect skills, roles, and career paths.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it kind of helps a bit above as well in terms of learning strategy. I think one of the things AI, we've used it here in terms of is helping us make sure we kind of have that almost external perspective of does the strategy make sense in terms of looking at the skills, the learning, the output, the roles. So I think that's kind of one of the key areas where it can really support in terms of analyzing it, in terms of defining, but also helping taxonomies. From a skills perspective per se, what we've actually found is it's helped us also kind of focus on the right skills. So if I look at previous organizations I've worked in, we've had taxonomies which have got so many skills, you know where to start. And the AI has helped us actually determine which skills, based on the goals, objectives, type of organization, type of people, are the ones to focus on first, and then second and third, and then actually what learning actually supports that as well. So it's helped in terms of helping us define that. But it's also helped us define from a skills perspective how to measure when this learning is taking place, has it actually made an impact as well. So it's almost like starting with the end in mind, and it's helped kind of challenge in the sense of, if you do this, this could be an outcome, and then actually this is an outcome you can measure as well. And I think one of the key things probably many people in the group suffer from is L&D, leadership development, all those learning kind of spaces are all being asked, okay, what's the return on investment? What's the impact on the organization? I found when it comes to defining the skills, create learning which matches the skills, evaluating the learning which is matches the skills, AI has helped us along that journey, because it's helped us actually find the key steps and the key things to do, and also challenged us when we haven't got enough of a measure to do that as well.
Yeah, it makes sense that we need a measure. We need to start with the end in mind. So there's things that we need to do. We're making steps in that direction, but progress to be made as well. And yeah, measuring is important, and having a look at what we're doing and improving. Patrik, do you have any maybe examples that you could share or ideas on how we can turn AI data into real learning insights?
Yeah, depends a little bit how we define AI or how we define data, right? So I think partially any information that we want to teach is technically data. And of this, we have plenty in organizations, be it the SharePoint or the Notion database, or also all the meetings that take place. We've been experimenting a little bit with those products too, basically having call recordings, which you can then upload into AI that can create learning material from this. So, of course, there's all of that data, but we spoke about that a little bit already. I think the other category of data, which now partially becomes more available, is learner data. Out of all the people who have taken your course, where did they get stuck? Which questions did they answer wrong? And also, once we start getting a bit more dynamic courses, getting a better understanding of where do people have less knowledge and where do they have more in certain topics. It's hard with today's kind of courses, but I think once we get these dynamic experience that Talha spoke of, we'll get a lot more data on how the learning itself is going, which ties into a little bit what Derek mentioned there in terms of measuring that impact. The holy grail will, of course, be to measure also what is the impact of the actual work being done. If we can prove that impact, the rest is very easy. That you can show that these trainings have improved this, or it has reduced error rates, which I've seen a few examples of. I think it was one oil company that had a lot of security issues, and they collect a lot of these data. When there's a security fault somewhere, when there's a risk or a hazard, they will write this as a security incident. So they have all of that rich data. And then they did a big push also together with Easygenerator to create trainings as to how to bring up safety and security awareness across the organization, how to operate all of this machinery within the oil and gas industry. And they could tangibly see these risk incidents going down. So to try to approach that is, of course, again, the holy grail of being able to do it. And also those things become a little bit more doable with AI when you can start measuring at a broader scale, and also the trainings themselves.
I think it makes sense. And it'll be exciting to see where it goes. Speaking of where it goes, I am curious to also talk about, the future of learning and where AI will play a role, whether it's peer learning or something else. So perhaps, Derek, you might like to provide some insight. Where will you see AI having the biggest impact on learning experiences in the next few years? Let's give it some time and not constrain ourselves.
I mean, I think one of the nice, and it is kind of my ideal. I remember watching a film years ago, Bruce Willis, and it had lots of agents in the film. So the fact people didn't actually go outside and when they used AI agents. I think one of the potential use of AI can be in a sense of very much learning in the flow of work and actually predicting what you need to know as well. Previously, I've used Microsoft Teams, and they had, I can't remember what it's called now, there's this learning section within Microsoft Teams which kind of prompts you on what you need to do. And I think the next stage is going to be having almost assistants which kind of are your learning assistant, which kind of looking at your use of email, your use of Output, your use of Excel, PowerPoint, Word, can also define gaps where you have gaps, so you have skills gaps, and actually predict what you would need to be doing to actually fill those gaps based on conversations as well. I think that kind of predictive use, and I know if I think about banking, there's a bank in the Netherlands who are trialing in a weird way prediction where you spend too much on a certain item. So for example, over the last 4 weeks, you spent 15 euros on Starbucks coffee. Do you need the next coffee? I think that kind of, not stopping having coffee, but that kind of concept where it predicts where you have a gap, what you could be doing, and actually then takes you to where you need to be learning in terms of the future. I think that's a really, really a cool application of AI if we can get to that point where it's also applicable and relevant and accurate as well. But I think that to me is kind of a nice next step.
Yeah, and it makes sense. So it's changing how we do things and how we come up with those gaps. Talha, do you see AI changing the role of how learning professionals are working and their role when it comes to learning, with that in mind?
Definitely, I think we see the immediate impacts already on how knowledge is being shared and consumed, and I think it was going to keep growing from here. And there are possibly areas that we haven't even thought of right now on how this technology can completely change the workflows. Even if you look at it from a let's say engineering perspective and coding perspective, the kind of strides that AI has taken in AI-based coding, now engineering teams are completely realigning on their strategies and how to incorporate that in their workflows, and how that's going to decrease the time it takes to ship code, for example. And similarly for learning professionals, how do they look at speed, for example, within the organization in terms of delivering content? How do they look at the problem of overcoming these lengthy backlogs and resource constraints, which are very common in L&D organizations? And how do they look at, for example, instructional design driven content creation versus subject matter expert driven content creation? How does that fall, and the potentially transition of instructional designers to consultants, for example? We have already spoken to many instructional designers that are looking at their role evolving to consultants as well, where subject matter experts now will be equipped with the ID knowledge that they didn't have before, and AI brings that to them and closes that barrier. So all of these changes are happening, and it's definitely going to change learning professionals' role and evolve completely.
Yeah. So I guess you touch on speed here. So it's going to make processes faster, training faster, roles are going to change. We see people moving towards consultancy or consultant type role. Derek, does that align with how you see AI changing the flow of work, or is there anything that you would add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true. If I look at the teams I'm working in now, the role of what we would call content designers has definitely moved away from just designing content. We've been using libraries to help support that, but it's also moved towards kind of coaching individuals to understand AI. And this is a really strange quirk of where we are now. But when we look at the use of AI, even within HR, some people kind of use it and have this weird feeling of, I've used AI to do something. Should I be telling people? Because it's kind of, have I cheated? And I think looking at the roles of the L&D people, they need to appreciate that AI is also something which they should be using, can be using, and does make sense. It increases efficiency. It can increase accuracy once it's checked, but also it gives them space to do other stuff as well. So I think the role, a lot of the admin, the stuff which many admins, many L&D people don't want to be doing or don't want to do as much of, it can give that space as well, you know. And I think that's where we kind of need to just appreciate we should be using it. And one example is there's also a company called Ezra who do coaching, and they've got this great AI coach where basically just helps individuals improve their performance based on specific needs. Now, one of the things we've seen with that particular tool is that it allows you to deploy coaching to many more people, because you can actually use AI, you can actually do it over more people, and the cost isn't inhibitive. Now, that, if you're looking at leaders, managers being able to be coached and actually be better managers and leaders, that's helping organizations get better. And L&D teams help define the coaches and what they do, but it's being deployed using AI. And so for me, that is also where the role is, as you mentioned, consulting. It's also knowing what the hell prompts you use. That's a big part in terms of how you're going to be using AI and what works, what doesn't work. But also, I think building trust of others in an organization that AI is awesome, which you can use, because there's a big thing around, should I be using it? And that's something I hadn't anticipated in an organizational landscape.
Yeah, I appreciate that, some of the insights. And I also think you spoke to me directly when you said it being afraid of using AI, perhaps.
Yeah,
I do use AI, I like it. But I have changed my writing style. I don't use M dash anymore after seeing a lot of people on LinkedIn saying that only AIs use M dash. So yeah, I've adapted a bit myself. In the chat, we also have some nice comments, for example, from David. He was sharing some hints and tips, which is really useful, and why I like being live despite the interruptions on my end. But yeah, thanks, David. It's a great example of good learning design, breaking content into clear objectives and bite-sized sections. First, makes AI tools like Easygenerator much more effective. So there's things that we can be doing and ways that we can learn, whether we're acting as a consultant or as a knowledge sharer. Yeah, speaking of knowledge sharers, Patrik, I'm curious if you have any tips or insights on how AI can benefit both teachers and learners.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of the ways that we spoke a bit through, now we have this generator product where there's a lot of things happening already. Talha has been working on a new AI product actually, which is launching pretty soon, which is the AI being more involved throughout the work. So some of you might be familiar with the course builder already. You basically provide all of your context into the AI, and then we produce an entire course about it. In reality, though, and very often working with AI, the first thing that the AI gives you is not perfect. There's actually a lot of things that need to change. And I just hope that people don't see that as, oh, the AI failed with what it was doing. Most likely, if you would give the same task to a human, the human would also fail, because that human wouldn't know what you're thinking about. So what's happening now to this new launch is that we give you a first version of what this is, but then the AI is with you, and you can say, hey, you got this completely wrong, or you forgot about this section, which is talked about in the document. I wanted to create a section on that, or please make this interactive components. So again, it comes back to what I mentioned before about augmentation. I think it's impossible to automate all of this, and it is something very deeply human about learning and development and this field. Because if everything was machine, then what is the purpose of any human? And we're just not there. So the question is still, how can we empower people? So indeed, I think someone said excited for the launch. I'm super excited for that launch as well once it comes. And that is very much the AI helping you with the heavy lifting. That is not to mention everything that can happen on the learner side. I saw a couple of people talking about a call simulator, essentially role playing with AI and richer learner side experiences around simulations and adaptive learning and all of those that we spoke a bit about. So yeah, also once again about Easygenerator. Be ready for that one. That's going to be super exciting. Tools are there, help people create more content faster at higher quality.
It makes sense. Help people create faster. I think I can add in me three. I'm also excited. Yeah, but there's a lot of opportunities, and I think some of this is coming around again to what Talha mentioned. So it's creating faster, but it's also creating personalized content or journeys. So I'm curious, Talha, if you have anything to add. What's next in personalization for learning?
Yeah, I think from a personalization perspective, if you look at the context of learning in our tool, right? I think what's really next, and I think that it will be one of the bigger puzzles to solve, is the concept of adaptive learning, right? I think we talk a lot about it, but there's a lot of science to it. And to really understand what really works, because learner preferences are like, it's it cannot be very deterministic by just being, okay, this is the learning preference. Learning preferences are very diverse, right? So everyone learns differently, and to create a system that really adapts to the learner's needs, very specific learner needs, for like, for example, Derek or myself or Patrik, all learning differently, and that system being able to adapt to that, and showing content tailor-made for us, and be able to score us and be able to guide us and help consume it better, retain it better. I think that system, I think that is the next thing for personalized learning, cracking the code and adaptive learning. And I think we at Easygenerator are already eyeing that and looking forward to that. So I think that will be the bigger piece on the personalization part, at least.
Yeah, it's exciting. A lot of hope for the future for sure. But I guess, yeah, we're all here today together at a webinar. So I guess to wrap things up before we take a closer look at some of those questions in the chat, Derek, do you have one piece of advice that you would give to L&D leaders navigating AI?
I think probably two, but I think one of them is they need to balance the reality of what it can do versus what people think it can do versus the noise. And I think Patrik's point around it's not the great savior, but it is a great way of actually changing and actually turning learning into a different perspective. As somebody leading a space, there's been so much. I've gone to a conference last year, but AI was the main topic. I left the conference after today's thinking, but it's not much different to last year. It's moved forward. So we need to temper how we use it and expectations of how we're going to use it as well. But I do think it is going to be a great turning point, going back to the very first point.
Yeah. And I think that's nice that there's something that we can all start looking at and start reflecting on today. We have a little bit of time left, so I do also want to acknowledge everybody in the chat. I know there's questions coming in. So if you do have thoughts, ideas to share, feel free to pop them there. But Patrik, I see a good question that perhaps you can provide some insight on, and that is, how can we help leaders see the value of investing in AI responsibly?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. I think the operative word there is responsibly. And what does that mean? And this has a lot of different angles to it. One thing about responsible use of AI is that we can't leak all of our information about the company. In other words, it has to be secure and it has to be safe. I think when the cloud launched 20 years ago, no one trusted that it would be secure to put your data in the cloud, in the internet. That would be crazy. You have to put it on your own servers. Now that's very normal. I think we're in a similar place now with AI. There's a bit of a trust issue. And how do you make sure that this is not being trained on? So that is on a very fundamental level, which some companies are facing right now in terms of how to use it responsibly and convincing leaders of this. And that, of course, comes with a lot of contractual work and making sure that this is basically in pure form, that this is data that is secure. We handle it securely under all of the regulations that exist out there, and we're not training on it, et cetera, et cetera. That is one piece. Then we also have a ton of other questions in terms of just what value will we get out of this? If you want to present this towards leadership or as leaders, is that thing we talked about before. What is hype? It's very easy to spend a lot of money on AI. That is not difficult. But what you actually get in return comes back to what I mentioned earlier. Find those use cases where there's a real problem that is costing us real money, and then see, can AI help us in this case? For example, in L&D, can it help us speed up course creation or learning capabilities? And there's a lot of other things around responsibility there and the ethics of AI and how to do that. So we can go deeper into it. But I think those are some pieces. But again, there's a lot of pillars to responsible use of AI, and it will be different for different companies. If anyone is interested in talking more about this, by the way, do reach out to me afterwards on LinkedIn or something. I love this topic overall, and we can have a longer discussion on it.
Yeah, I'd encourage you. It's a great opportunity to dive deeper. I know you touched on security, and we need to make sure that, we're being secure with the data that we're feeding the AI. I think that follows up nicely with a question. There's some curiosity about what's holding people back. We talked about the future and what we can do already. Talha, maybe do you have any insight there?
Yeah, I think trust. When you look at the whole concept of trust, there's also one thing that is a fear, right? That AI is going to take over my job, right? That kind of fear. That at the start was becoming more of a barrier for people to adopting AI. But I think now people are gelling into it a bit more, trying it a bit more. I think it goes back to Derek's point where he mentioned that encouraging people to try a lot of these AI features or these AI tools, and the term being AI proficient, right? I think using a lot of these AI tools will help you become AI proficient and help you establish trust, right, with AI as you experiment with it even more and more. I think that's one thing. And then also the skill development, right, is one of the other things. Is like people would, for example, go on ChatGPT, or people would go on some AI tool, and then they would start prompting, right, and oftentimes would not get the response that they're looking for, and that's it, right? They'll just go back to their normal way or manual workflow. But I think people should invest a lot of time in try to understanding how prompting works, right? I think it's a very critical or key skill that one should truly master. And I think it's a basic skill. The better you are at prompt engineering, the better you will be across all AI tools, right? It's not just Easygenerator, but even ChatGPT or Notebook LM or Claude or Synthesia, for example, or HeyGen, right? It's a core skill now, I think, prompting that one should really master. But then there are also other things like data privacy, security, and I think a lot of the responsibility there falls on the shoulders of organizations like Easygenerator ourselves, right? But not only us, the providers like OpenAI, for example, to really ensure that the solution that we're building keeps these things at the heart. It's like a hygiene factor, right? To make sure that the data privacy and security aspects are covered, and we ensure that the organizations trust us.
Yeah, it makes sense. Make trust. Also, prompting. Well, I guess that goes hand in hand. And I can certainly see how it's evolved. It's nice to remember that, I don't think AI is going to replace us anytime soon, because it doesn't have all our experiences, contexts, and insights. Derek, there's another question I see in the chat, and I think you might have some unique insight here. And that is, how do we keep human creativity alive while using AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I think I had an experience a couple of weeks ago at a team day where we were talking about the use of Copilot, which is the choice of the Apple choice. And it was used as an activity within a team day for people to use Copilot to create the top 5 prompts on Copilot and actually then share with the rest of the team in a creative way. So actually incorporating use of AI in a team session as an activity, and then using the outcome to share but also to learn, was weirdly a very recent experience I've had. But it also kind of shows that it works hand in hand, works in tandem. And I think the creativity piece, we mentioned the prompts bit, we mentioned the security bit, we mentioned being aware of reality, what it can do versus the noise. But I think just incorporating it and talking about it and actually using it in ways where you're connecting to people as well, and actually doing it outside of yourself. I think there's always this kind of concern that everybody goes into a little room and they use AI on their own. Why not use it within a team context? Why not use the learning which you get, for example, from EG, and actually do it as part of a team event? And actually, it's that kind of piece around merging and blending the two together, which makes it still relevant and keeps a human piece in it as well. And I think the other thing which I see, which is beautiful about it, is also people sharing what they've done wrong on it and the mess ups and the challenges, and talking about it and actually learning from it collectively. And I think that again helps you actually then keep the human bit, because you kind of go, well, actually so and so knew that, and it's helped me improve how I use AI, as opposed to just not even talking about it. So that connection with other people and actually using it as part of your day to day, I think is really important as well. Hope it makes sense.
I think it does make sense to make anything a habit, and to make it actionable. I think you have to connect it to your day to day. But I might be wrong, and if I am, feel free to correct me here on the panel or live in the chat. I see some more questions coming in as well. There is one, let me scroll back up so I don't miss it, from Kate around is Easygenerator doing anything or looking into offsetting the environmental impacts of using AI? Talha, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I think it's a very nice question. And I think now with the AI infrastructure expanding, a lot of of course, the AI providers, like, for example, OpenAI and Google, Gemini, it kind of falls upon a lot on their shoulders, because, of course, they're in charge of the large data centers. But then also from companies like us, we do try our best to include in our criteria when we're selecting the providers, that they are doing something on that, similarly to bias, for example, or ethical standards. So this is very important, and then we should also consider this in our criteria for onboarding many AI providers. But there's a lot of more work to be done on this side. And when we say more work, a lot of it is around awareness, right? Not many people are aware of this actually being a problem, right? So one is to spread the awareness around this, and then also take actionable steps to increase, the evaluation on that side.
Yeah, I think also on this one, it's a very interesting question, just quickly to dig in on this one too, which is the selection of the model. As many of you know, there's a lot of different models out there. Some are very expensive, some are very cheap. So China, about a year ago or less than that, came out with a new model that was called DeepSeek, which was something like 10 or 20 or 30 times cheaper than the other models. It's not about the money. What the money represents is how much compute went into calculating this answer. And the more efficiently you can do this, the less electricity you need to do it, and the less water it consumes, et cetera, et cetera. And here we're on this kind of Moore's law curve, but a different curve, in the sense that we have models which are becoming more capable every month, every year, but they're also becoming cheaper to operate. Our human brain, for example, consumes about 20 watts of energy. And that is kind of, in the long run, should it be possible to operate and compute things as cheaply as what nature has created with our brain? And I guess the answer is yes. There's a lot of innovation that is still to happen there. And when you look at these curves in the amount of compute, the amount of energy that it took to process one token, is really dropping fast over time. So I think one of the main things that we have to do as Easygenerator is really be on the hook there as well, and make sure that we follow the trends in terms of having the best models available and the cheapest ones, not for the sake of the money alone, but it also represents something behind the money, which is really the environmental impact. Because it's super important. If we continue at this rate going forward, just a couple of years, we'll have huge data centers doing nothing but computing AI. Reality is that this doesn't scale linearly, and it has never done with a lot of these technology topics. We have this decrease. It's what happened with electrical cars. We could never produce electrical cars if we still had the same battery as we did back in the days. The environmental impact would be disastrous, but we sort of grow out of that. Also, that's not a reason to ignore the environmental impact that we have today, but we got to stay on top of it. So it's a very valid question. I agree.
And I think, is it also, and this is more of a question because I'm not as techy as you guys, is it also a matter of making sure people aren't using so many prompts in the first place? Because if you're using 100 versus 10, that's having a knock-on effect. And if If a package is so advanced, it makes it easy to actually get what you want from the first 2 or 3 prompts. It then uses less energy. Is that a common sense comment or completely off the cuff?
I think uh, just to weigh in on that, I think responsibility of ensuring that the environment is not impacted negatively rests on the shoulder from the
Yeah,
providers down to the users as
yeah,
well. So this could absolutely be one of the ways that one contributes towards ensuring that the environmental impact is as minimal as possible. When you when you learn prompting as a skill and you get proficient at it, you will learn that you don't need 100 prompts to get to your
for example, yeah.
desired output, right? You
Mm.
can definitely reduce that. So this could be one of the things, of course, that an end user level, who's end user that is thinking, how can I contribute? This could be potentially one of those things. Get proficient at prompting, right? And use less tokens. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I notice we just have a few minutes left. I found that interesting. I never thought of comparing, yeah, I guess usage to what my brain uses. So I've learned a few things here as well. But I do see a question that I think that is interesting, and maybe you can jump in on this, Patrik. Can you summarize which EG features currently allows us to personalize the experience for different learners?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that we're working on in an experimentation phase, because this is also a new thing for Easygenerator. To what degree do we want to have very custom experiences on the learner side? Historically, Easygenerator has been about creating courses which are kind of static. I mentioned one already, which is the notion of role playing, which is kind of personalization in the sense that you're adapting the whole experience to what the learner is doing. Another couple of pieces that also I'm looking together with Talha is the idea of adaptive learning and branching, basically coming to a conclusion on, you know, this topic already, but you don't know too much about this yet. So there's a lot of things we still have on the plans there. For the time being, it's quite experimental. So a long way to go when it comes to adaptive learning, branching, and using AI with this. A key thing for us is that we want to make sure that it's rightly done. For a lot of customers that we talk to, they want to know, what does a learner see? What is the learning experience? What will they be taught? So when we played around very early on with AI experience that were highly dynamic, is that it was a little bit random in terms of what the learner saw. The AI concluded that you know this already, but then the author was like, well, they didn't really. So you lost a lot. And as an author, as an L&D professional, you could never really know, like, did the learner get this information, yes or no? So this is a question that we want to make sure we really get right before we just put some AI adaptive learning out there that sounds really fancy. It comes back to what we talked about earlier, fancy and flashy features versus some that actually solves an underlying problem. And the main thing that we have to solve for there is to make sure that when people use these adaptive experiences, we really know that they picked up on all the learning objectives in the correct manner, and that we can kind of certify that that was the case. So there's some more learning or some more development rather for us to do to have those pure adaptive, personalized experience, as goes for the rest of the industry too. So we have some early takes on it, but we have a longer way to go, that's for sure. I'm not sure, Derek or Talha, if you have anything to add to that. And we're also on time, maybe. But...
I am conscious of the time, and there is one last question that I would love to get your input on, Derek, and that is, if you had to name one AI trend that will truly shape learning in the next 5 years, what would that be?
I think, I don't know if it will shape, but I hope it does, but I think the ability to apply agentic AI with ethics. And I say that in the sense of a lot of the stuff we do from a learning perspective, whether it's coaching or giving us feedback or prompts, whatever, we don't have that ability for the AI to easily have the ethical element inside of it. And I think if you're thinking about human centricity, you're thinking about working with as opposed to against. If there's a trend where we can truly crack a nut, where the ethical part of it is the ethical design comes through. And if you think about coaching, as said, leadership, all those kind of learning interventions, I think that will be a big step forward as well. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you for that. I am conscious of the time. I'm glad to see we still have some of you here in the chat with us. So yeah, to wrap things up, thank you very much, Derek, Talha, and Patrik for joining today.